Hello everyone, Madmandoc here, and welcome to the next in my series of Gemp Star Wars CCG gameplay videos. It's been quite a while since my last video, maybe 3 or 4 months, and the game has changed quite a bit since then. Things have been developing very quickly over on the test server where I've been doing essentially all of my playing. We've gotten the bulk of all the interrupts in the game, and most of the key mechanics are in place. There's still a few objectives and other notable things that have yet to be implemented, but it's definitely a viable environment, and it's changing rather frequently, so it's a little bit more fresh than kind of over on the main server where the game hasn't changed too much over the last 8 or 9 months. It's good to be back with another video. I really appreciate those of you who've been watching, and especially those of you who have asked me to make more. That's always fun, and I'm glad to be back. So here in this matchup, I'll be playing the light side. I have a virtual careful planning with Endor and dense forest start, and I'm playing against This Deal Is Getting Worse All the Time. Which will be some sort of Cloud City control deck, maybe Cloud City Occupation or Dark Deal. There's different ways to play it, but it's a common dark side deck, and usually you see just a lot of power, a lot of control, kind of battle oriented. For my deck, I would say that it's a little bit experimental. It has the quality cards in it because you should try and take the deck seriously, but I wanted to experiment a little bit with Virtual Careful Planning, which is a card that I never had a chance to play with in kind of the real world. I actually stopped playing Star Wars CCG around about maybe the second virtual set. So when this card came out on test server, I was very interested in it. It has a lot of flexibility and can be the basis for a lot of new deck designs that I'd never really tried before. I wanted to see what would happen if I played it on Endor. And I kind of quickly came up with the idea of maybe pairing it with close air support and the Tala fighters to control the Endor system and to project some power onto the ground and to play kind of efficiently with low deploy but resilient and tough ships that reinforce the ground. So let's see how this plays out here. Okay, now on the first turn I use strike planning to pull generals. First off, I pull General Calrissian, who can go in Gold Squadron 1 using the squadron assignments, and I pull Crix Madine. I'll explain that a little bit more later. My opponent quickly puts out They'll Never Again Leave This City and deploys the executor for free. Now obviously that is a great start for him. That is a super strong card. They Must Never Again Leave This City. I think in some ways it's almost a little bit of an imbalanced card, but I also think that the light side was dominating space around the phase of the game when that card was brought in, and so maybe it was intended to address a little bit of imbalance that already favored the light. It's far from a broken card, but it's a really strong card, and obviously being able to put it out on the first turn and deploy this super powered ship right away is very good for him. As you can see, I have a pretty good contingent of ships in my opening hand. I don't have much in the way of ground forces, but I do have Red Squadron 1, I have Tycho, I was able to pull General Calrissian, and I have Spiral. Now, that means that in conjunction with squadron assignments, I'm going to be able to get a whole bunch of ships into space fairly quickly and fairly relentlessly. I should also point out that Crix Madine is in the deck, and once deployed, he can pull Lieutenant Blount and Colonel Kraken. They also can be used with squadron assignments to pull their matching ships, Tala 1 and Tala 2. It gives me a lot of space power and also matches up with close air support to allow me to add destinies to, or add battle destiny and add a destiny to power on the ground. Now, you don't see that very much. I just kind of wanted to experiment with it and see how it goes. It turns out that once you get it going, it actually is very, very strong. Causes a lot of problems for the opponent. And with this setup, with this start, Crix mating and strike planning and such, it's inevitable that I can get those ships out. Now, of course, it takes a few turns because you can't do everything all at once. You have to be a little bit tactical in how you want to proceed based on what your opponent's doing and try and make good decisions. But based on what I've got in my starting hand here and the fact that he put out Executor on the first turn, I can see that we're going to be fighting in space almost right away, and it's going to be a fight for the Bespin system. As you may know, if the dark side uses one of these Bespin starts, the key to the game is the Bespin system. And similarly, if the light side's playing Quiet Mining Colony, the key to the game is the Bespin system. But if you let dark get hold of Bespin and get it locked in, you're just in for a very, very long game. If you can fight back and get control of that system, though, you're going to massively disrupt whatever plans they had for the game. So let's see how this unfolds. Now, on the first turn, I use squadron assignments to put out Red Squadron 1 and Wedge Antilles. As those of you who've spoken to me about deck design know, I'm a huge fan of discounts to deploy cost, and Wedge in Red Squadron 1 to Endor costs only 3. So that's super strong. Also, General Calrissian in Gold Squadron 1 only costs 3 going to Endor. Also incredibly good for the value. So what I'll be looking to do here is to get out ships cheaply and then try and contest Bespin very early in the game. On my opponent's second turn, he puts down an armored attack tank and a tank commander. This is interesting. It's not exactly what you see all the time, but it's very, very strong. My ground forces are designed around Jedi Luke and lightsabers. Those tanks are going to be quite difficult to deal with, especially in the early game. Maybe later in the game, once I can kind of position and maneuver around a little more carefully, I can handle them, but I'm not going to be able to just go at those tanks. They're going to be sitting there for several turns, draining me in their early going. So that's a good play. Now the downside is those are expensive, and he's using up almost all of his available force to put out those powerful tanks. I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm using low-cost discounted things that aren't quite as formidable, but which leave me some room to draw cards into my hand and to save for interrupts and things like this. Okay. So continuing to my second turn, I activate 10 Force. He does have Battle Order out, so that's preventing me from draining right now, and he's been able to quickly deploy, so he's good to drain whenever he has the opportunity. When getting out my docking bays, I'm able to look at my reserve and see that my Green Squadron 3 was in the reserve, so I know that I can use squadron assignments to deploy Tycho in that ship, and we get that down at Bespin. I'll be able to Okay, so I have these ships facing off for control of Bespin and draw a couple of cards. Now, I draw well here. I get a Rebel Barrier and a Captain Han. That gives me the opportunity to barrier if a ship comes down and also to counterattack on the next turn if he decides to contest the Bespin system. He deploys the Cloud City occupation and brings Gizor up to the Executor. Draws a few cards. Okay, so I activate, and again I go looking for my docking bay and deploy it, but while I'm looking for that docking bay, I see that Gold Squadron 1 is in my reserve. So I can deploy Lando on Gold Squadron 1, and put Captain Han in there as well for the extra battle destiny. I also am able to deploy my I'll take the leader. And I have a very good situation here. We initiate a battle, and I have a pretty huge power advantage, as well as the ability to cancel his battle destiny. I draw quite well, getting a total of 9, and I cancel his battle destiny. Now, this forces him into a very tough spot. He is either going to have to lose the executor or take a really big chunk of battle damage. I think it's 11 battle damage. No? More? Quite a bit of battle damage. And he decides to keep the ship and take the force loss. Now, I think this is a little bit of a no-win situation for him, but I do favor keeping the ship because, as I mentioned before, control of the Bespin system is going to be the key to this game. And if he loses the executor completely, especially with my heavy space forces, he's never going to be able to get control of Bespin ever again. And he'll be suffering from his own battle order and having to pay for his strains. So probably wisely he decides to take the force loss, but he apparently does not have the pilots he needs to reinforce the executor. He instead deploys an armored attack tank and a droid. He gets another ground drain going, but that's not really what he needs. What he needs is to contest the Bespin system, and he's forced to move away, which cancels Cloud City occupation. So on my turn, I decide not to drain. It's important to not spend 3 force draining for a couple of cards in the early stages if it could hurt you in terms of getting control of the board setup. I still don't have any kind of a ground force. I still don't have a Jedi in my hand. And I'm going to be paying for drains if I try and use them now. So I'm instead going to skip out on that drain and work on solidifying control of space and then hopefully drawing a few cards to get something that I can use to control a ground site to get around battle order. It really does not make much of a difference to hit a person for 2 force in the early game. What matters is getting control of the board. If you get control of the board, you've got all the time in the world to make them lose cards. It's not a rush. So playing correctly when battle order or battle plan is on the table is really important. Now, once again, I get a little bit lucky here, and I see as I'm looking for a docking bay that the Outrider is in my reserve deck, and I use squadron assignments to deploy it along with Lieutenant Blount. This gives me yet another opportunity to put some beats on the executor. I use Outrider and Dash together to reduce its power and draw a battle destiny, and I hit him with I think 7 more battle damage. Pretty big chunk. He again decides not to lose the ship. Again, I think that's another lose-lose scenario for him, but it's probably better to keep the ship if he has any chance of reinforcing it and keeping control of the system. I move the Gold Squadron over to be sure that he can't make a really effective counterattack against me. And he brings Dr. Ebazan and Ponda Baba, as well as P-59 onto the executor. Now, this is a little bit of a desperation play. He does not have the kind of inexpensive high forfeit pilots that he would like to have available for this situation. So he spends a very large amount of his available force essentially putting a forfeit fodder on a ship that is in trouble. Now at this point, I want to continue to beat on the executor and increase the pressure. So I bring Tala 1 with Core and Horn on it, and I make another attack on the executor at a big power advantage. I draw quite well with a 5 and another 5. That's not unusual with this deck. It does have very high destinies, especially when you account for the fact that it has the ability to pull essentially all of the low destinies out of the deck. You can see I've got these ships and pilots with their low destinies, but they're all on the board. The stuff that's left in the reserve deck is a bunch of high destinies. So that really works. And he's forced to lose the executor. Now, at this point, I've got total control of space, and there's pretty much nothing he can do about it. He's never going to be able to do anything about the situation in space for the rest of the game. He does have strong ground forces, but he has to pay for his drains due to his own battle order, and soon I'll be able to get a ground force down at some location to enforce menace fades on him and to free up my drains so I can drain for free. And that's when the pressure is really going to get severe. He elects to pay for drains, and I lose a few cards. I actually am totally fine with that. Obviously, you don't want to lose cards, but I'd rather him have 3 less force to use to try and get back in the game than save me those cards. On this turn, I literally have nothing better to do with my force than to pay for drain, so I do drain a 2. And I decide to kind of increase the pressure a little bit by landing Wedge and Tycho at the docking bay. Now they can still cancel a destiny together. I still have the Rebel barrier, so I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to suffer horrible beats or anything, even if he manages to come with some powerful guys. Now he does play Darth Maul with lightsaber, which would ordinarily be a worry for me, but luckily I have Rebel barrier. And I'm able to prevent him from taking on my guys if that was his intention. This is yet another big resource swing. So basically what's happened there is I landed these guys from the system. He deployed one of his strongest characters, Darth Maul with lightsaber, and got barriered. It cost him 7 force to deploy that Darth Maul. It might have been 8 due to my control of the Bespin system, or yeah, I can't remember which way that works, but I'll check into that later. And he hasn't really accomplished anything in terms of his board control. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put those guys back in their ships and fly them out of there. I get in the drains that I don't have to pay for now, and of course I've deployed Menace Fades. I've also managed to draw Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, which I'll be able to deploy somewhere, probably on Endor. Put out that docking bay I've been holding in my hand for a while. And get out Luke with lightsaber. Now I have a very strong drain on Endor between the lightsaber and the I'll take the leader. And I'm going to have Wedge and Tycho just slip back up to that system, get out of Maul's way. Readjust the ships. And I'm able to spread out a little bit here since he only has 3 cards in hand. I should also point out that his circulating life force is down to only 11 cards, which means that if he wants to pay to drain, he's going to be resource starved for the turn, since that'll use up most of the available force he has for deployment, weapon swings, battle destiny, etc. Here he manages to bring yet another tank to the ground. And initiates battle against me. He knew that Battle Destiny of 6 was coming because I had replaced his Admiral's Order with mine. I also knew that he was going to draw a Battle Destiny of 6. So my Tala ship is eliminated, but Luke is still immune to that attrition. I use a All Wings report in to grab my Tala, and I'm going to deploy that to the docking bay and have Corran Horn get up to that system, and thus be able to use close air support to support me on Endor. Get in a good round of drain for 4. Bring out Order to Engage. And I'm able to drop my Tala fighter and my close air support. Move some guys around. Corran Horn takes off so that I can use close air support. Now let's just talk for a minute about close air support. This card, once you get it going, really good, really good. Extra Destiny and a Destiny to power in a deck full of high Destiny draws. Really, really helps control a location. Plus, it kind of has a synergy that I really like. I love it when ships in space are also boosting your forces on the ground. That can happen to a small degree with systems like Tatooine, where you just add a power. But something like this is really awesome. It turns a Tala fighter, which is kind of a weak starfighter that's outclassed by almost everything that the light side has in space, into a really, really effective ship, because it's doing something other than just sit there and hold a system and drain for 1. It's allowing you to control the ground. Really interesting. And it's kind of fun too. Nice little twist. I've not used it before, but I kind of like it. And they didn't see this in this game, but Crix Maydeen can make this combo happen, because I pull him at the start of the game, and he can pull Lieutenant Blount and Colonel Kraken, who then can use squadron assignments to go get their Tala fighter. So that didn't really happen in this game, but the way this works out is that sooner or later you're going to be able to get the close air support set up. It's really only a question of drawing the close air support card. In this particular deck, I only had 1 copy of it, but I've since modified this deck to make it a little more efficient, a little better, and I've gone to 2 copies of close air support, because I think that's definitely the way to do it. I also have deployed Order to Engage, which is going to force him to fight me at a severe disadvantage, or lose 3 force. Draw a few cards. Order to Engage is almost always a good card. It just gives you so many strategic possibilities and little tactical traps you can use. I like to go ahead and try and deploy it as soon as I can. I don't always wait until I'm sure I'm about to use it, because things come up. Little simple tricks like, you just barrier somebody and now they can't fight you and the opponent loses 3 force. Or it can have an effect in the way they move their guys around. It just a particularly strong card. We get in some drains, and I'm looking at this Endor location, and 2 tanks is a bit much, even with the close air support. It's just too much power. So I come on over here to face off with Darth Maul, and it happens that I have the cards I need to deal with him. Blaster Deflection cancels a swing of his saber, and when he makes his second saber, he only draws a 4 and then a 1, but if he had managed to draw high there, I could have still canceled it with Obi-Wan's Journal. Take a swing at Darth Maul. This is just a lucky shot, really, but I do hit on it. And as you may have noticed, I moved that Talon Fighter over to best bin, so I'm getting the close air support bonus of the 2 Battle Destiny and the Destiny added to power. And it adds up to quite a lot. I think my total power here ends up being approximately 18 for one character. Yeah, that's some good stuff. If I were at a location like Tatooine where the ships were adding more power, that might be even better. But as you can see, 18 power for one guy, pretty remarkable use of that close air support. Okay, so with that battle damage, that's game. And I want to say thank you to my opponent who continued to play this game through to the end, specifically so that I could make this video. We had a little chat about it. He had asked when my next video was going to be, and I suggested maybe this would be it if we went ahead and played it out to the end. There's not always a lot of point in doing a video if it only plays 5 turns and ends. So I appreciate him kind of playing along there to the end. It gave me an opportunity to try out close air support towards the end, and I just really want to say thanks for that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll get some more of these out in the near future, and I know that soon we'll be having some major transitions from the test server. I think it's going to be moved over to the main pretty soon, and that'll change things a lot. So I hope everyone's still playing, having fun, and